The Virellan Star Empire had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. Its silver ships once shone like suns across the dark sea of space. But now, its borders burned. Rebellion spread from world to world. Loyal fleets fought their own kind. What had once been a proud empire was now cracking under its own pride. Captain Elias Drake watched all of this from the bridge of his small human-built corvette, Nomad's Grace. He was not Virellan, and never wanted to be. Humans were newcomers to the galaxy, short-lived, rough-spoken, and often ignored. But Elias had a reputation. He was the kind of man who could fly through a meteor storm, fix a broken engine with a spoon, and still find time to make a joke about it. For years, he worked as a hired pilot for the Virellan Navy. They said humans were reckless, but they also said he never failed a mission. He told them both were true. That morning his orders were simple: escort the royal flagship Seraph's End through a war zone. The princess herself was aboard, fleeing the capital after another failed defense. It sounded like a simple job. But deep inside, Elias felt a quiet warning hum in his chest. He had learned to trust that feeling more than any sensor. The fleet emerged from hyperspace near the dead world of Aerith Prime. The planet was black and cracked, its cities long since turned to glass by orbital bombardment. The Virellan commander's voice came over the radio, cold and proud. "Human captain, maintain distance. The royal ship is not to be approached unless ordered." Elias smirked and leaned back in his chair. "Aye, your highness of radios. Just here to make sure no one blows up your fancy boat." His co-pilot, a young human named Mara, gave a nervous laugh. "You think they even hear your sarcasm through that tone filter?" "Doesn't matter," Elias said, checking the scanner again. "Someone out there's listening, and I don't like what I'm not seeing." Moments later, the warning lights flashed. Multiple energy signatures appeared behind the royal fleet, fast, tight, and deadly. "Ambush!" Elias shouted. "Incoming!" "Ships, they're not ours." The Virellan ships moved with slow dignity, but the attackers, rebels flying stolen warships, came in like wolves. Beams of plasma ripped across the void. One hit the Seraph's End, tearing through its shields. Elias slammed the throttle forward. His corvette dived through the chaos, weaving between debris and explosions. "Mara, lock onto the flagships. Distress beacon, we're going in." "They told us not to approach." "Yeah, well," Elias said, gripping the controls. "I don't take orders from dying people." The Nomad's Grace docked against the burning hull of the royal flagship. The airlock opened to smoke and chaos. Sparks rained from broken panels. The corridors glowed red with emergency lights. Virellan soldiers, tall, elegant beings, with silver skin, ran past, their calm voices now filled with fear. Elias followed the signal to the royal chamber. 2 guards stood outside, one barely alive. Inside, the air shimmered with heat and fire. Princess Lyra Virellan stood in the center, her golden armor cracked, her silver hair tangled. She was holding a fallen guard's weapon, though her hands trembled. When she saw Elias, her blue eyes narrowed. You are human." "Good guess," Elias said, coughing through the smoke. "I heard you called for help." "I did not," she snapped. "Leave this place. The rebels will not take me alive. Lady, if you stay here, you won't have to worry about that. The fire will take you first." She hesitated. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not a soldier, not an officer, and certainly not a human. But before she could reply, another explosion tore through the ship. The floor tilted sharply. Elias caught her arm before she fell. "That was the reactor. We've got minutes before this ship turns into a new star. Move." They ran through collapsing corridors, smoke biting their lungs. The Nomad's Grace was still attached to the hull, but fire blocked the path. Elias scanned for an alternate exit, a damaged shuttle bay nearby. He guided her there, every step shaking with explosions. Lyra tried to maintain her royal calm, but her mind was spinning. Her empire was falling. Her guards were dead. And now her life depended on a reckless human pilot who didn't even bow to her. They reached the bay, half destroyed, open to the black of space. One emergency shuttle was left, but it had no power. Elias climbed inside, prying open the access panel. Give me a sec. I can reroute the auxiliary feed. Lyra stared. You think you can repair Varellan technology? He grinned without looking up. Lady, I've been fixing ships since I was 12. This one just looks fancier. He worked quickly, his hands moving like he'd done this 1,000 times. Sparks flew, and the shuttle came alive with a low hum. There, she'll fly, but not for long. Lyra hesitated. What of the others on the ship? Elias's eyes flickered with regret. There's no time. If we stay, we die with them. The deck beneath them cracked, metal groaning. Fire spilled into the bay. Lyra climbed aboard, her voice soft. Then may the stars forgive us. Elias powered the shuttle. Stars don't forgive, Princess, people do. The shuttle blasted free from the doomed flagship just as the Seraph's end exploded in a brilliant white flash. The shockwave hurled them through space. Elias wrestled the controls, trying to keep them steady, but alarms screamed everywhere. Engines failing, Mara's voice called over the comm from the Corvette. You're too close to the debris field. Get clear, Elias shouted. We'll find a way down. The shuttle spiraled toward the nearby moon, its surface gray and lifeless. Lyra clutched her seat, trying to stay calm as they descended through dust and lightning. Hold on, Elias yelled. This is going to be rough. The shuttle slammed into the moon's surface, skidding across rocky ground before stopping with a violent crash. Silence followed. Dust hung in the thin air. Elias coughed, unbuckling himself. His side hurt, but he was alive. He checked on Lyra. She was unconscious, but breathing. Gently, he pulled her out of the wreck and laid her on the cold ground. He looked around. The landscape stretched for miles, no sign of cities, no beacons, no ships. Only silence. The stars above shimmered coldly, watching. He looked down at the princess, her royal armor now dented and darkened. For the first time, she looked human. Small. Fragile. He sighed. Well, Your Highness, he muttered. Guess it's just you and me. Hours later, Lyra woke inside a makeshift shelter. Elias had patched the cracks in the shuttle hull and started a weak power core to generate heat. He was working quietly, fixing a cracked circuit board. She sat up slowly. You, stayed? Elias didn't look up. Yeah, didn't seem right to leave you out there. Besides, I need someone to argue with. Lyra frowned, unused to his casual tone. You do not fear me? He finally met her gaze. I don't fear people, Princess. Only bad decisions. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was heavy but not cold. Lyra finally said softly, You risked your life for me. Why? Elias shrugged. Didn't do it for your crown. Did it because you were alive. That's reason enough. Lyra looked away, her eyes shining faintly in the dim light. No one in her court had ever said such words. To her people, life was duty, rank, and legacy, not kindness. Outside, the wind howled faintly over the rocks. Elias checked the scanner. No signal. We're cut off. Maybe a week before anyone even realizes you're missing. Lyra straightened her shoulders, trying to sound regal again. Then we will survive. I command it. Elias gave a small grin. You can command me to fix the heater, maybe. The rest's gonna take work. For the first time, she smiled, a faint, unsure smile. You are very strange, human. He chuckled, turning back to his tools. You'll get used to it. Far above the moon, the ashes of the Seraph's End drifted through the void, the last light of a dying empire. But down on that silent rock, something unexpected had begun. Not an alliance, not a rebellion. Something smaller, quieter, and far more dangerous to an empire built on pride. A bond. The moon was silent, but the silence was deceptive. Beneath the calm gray surface, jagged rocks, deep crevices, and sudden dust storms made every step dangerous. For Princess Lyra Varellan, every moment was a test of patience and pride. For Elias Drake, it was a challenge of ingenuity and endurance. They had survived the crash, but survival meant more than breathing. They needed shelter, food, and a way to signal for help. Elias had spent the day scavenging what remained from the shuttle. Metal scraps, wires, broken panels, and a few ration packs were all they had. Yet even with limited supplies, he worked tirelessly, building a small shelter from the shuttle debris. It was not much, but it was a place to rest. Lyra watched silently. She had never expected to see a human engineer work with such skill. Every movement Elias made was deliberate, almost artistic, turning broken machinery into something useful. "Do you ever sleep?" she asked quietly, breaking the silence. "Sleep is for people who aren't worried about aliens, storms, or dying in their sleep," Elias replied without looking up. "I prefer fixing things. Keeps my mind busy." Lyra smiled faintly. "You are different from anyone I have known, and you're different from anyone I've saved," he said, finally glancing at her. "Most people yell at me for breaking rules. You don't." She looked away, embarrassed by her thoughts. She was a princess, heir to a dying empire, yet here she was, watching a human of all things, taking care of her. The thought was strange, unfamiliar. She had been trained to command, not to rely on anyone. The first night was cold. The moon's thin atmosphere offered little protection. Elias had managed to rig a small heater using the shuttle's auxiliary core, but the warmth barely reached them. Lyra huddled under a blanket, her mind racing. Her empire was gone. Her family had been scattered. Her advisors had either died or turned traitor. And yet here she was, alive because of a human. "Elias," she said softly, "why do you help me? You are not of my people. You have no duty to me." He looked up from his work, wires in hand. "Duty? That's a fancy word for what people expect you to do." "I help because it's the right thing. Not for glory, not for pay, just because it matters." Lyra considered his words. Duty had been everything to her. Her life had been a chain of orders, ceremonies, and expectations. Yet here on this cold, broken moon, Elias lived by something simpler, something pure. She did not speak again, but she watched him as he worked through the night. Sparks flew from a repaired panel, casting dancing shadows across the shelter. His hands moved quickly, confidently. Every problem he faced, he solved with patience, cleverness, and determination. The next day brought danger. A faint radar signal alerted Elias to approaching ships. Scavengers, alien raiders who had heard of the royal ship's crash, were heading toward them. They wanted technology, riches, or perhaps a message to sell. "We have company," Elias said, scanning the signal. "And they're fast." Lyra's hand went to the small weapon at her side. "We can fight?" Elias shook his head. "Not directly. They have firepower to destroy us in seconds, but we can be clever." He explained his plan quickly. They would use the rocky terrain to hide, create false signals to confuse the raiders, and set traps using metal scraps and the shuttle's damaged engines. Lyra hesitated. "This is risky," Elias smiled. "Life is always risky. That's why it's worth living." For hours they worked. Lyra learned to set traps, camouflage their shelter, and even make small diversions to draw attention away from their location. Elias taught her to think creatively, to use the environment as an ally. When the raiders arrived, they found a shattered shuttle and empty ground. False heat signatures led them into hidden pits and collapsing rock formations. The humans' small tricks caused confusion and delay. One by one, the alien ships turned back, frustrated. Lyra was surprised at how exhilarating it felt. The princess who once commanded armies now relied on a human's cleverness, fighting not with soldiers but with wit. When the danger passed, she turned to Elias. "I underestimated humans." He shrugged. "Most people do. We're small, messy, and loud. But we're tough. We don't give up easily." Days passed. The harsh conditions of the moon tested them in ways no battle ever could. Food and water ran low. Dust storms raged across the gray plains, forcing them to take shelter and conserve resources. Yet, through every challenge, Elias remained steady, calm, and resourceful. Lyra, too, began to change. She stopped thinking like a ruler and started thinking like a survivor. She learned to make quick decisions, improvise, and trust instincts rather than royal training. Elias never asked her to follow blindly. Instead, he encouraged her to think, to experiment, to try. And each small victory built her confidence. One evening, they sat outside the shelter, watching a faint red sunset. Lyra spoke quietly. "Elias, I do not understand you. You risk your life for people you do not even know. You trust me without knowing if I am worthy. Why?" He looked at her, the fading sun glinting in his eyes. Because life is about moments like this. Not crowns, not empires, not power. People matter. You matter. Lyra's heart tightened. She had heard words like this from advisors, diplomats, and generals. But they always felt hollow. These words, spoken in the cold wind of a dead moon by a human with no claim to power, felt real. For the first time, she felt something she had not allowed herself to feel in years. Hope. Weeks passed. Their shelter became sturdier. Elias built a small water collector from debris. He scavenged edible plants from cracks in the moon's soil, showing Lyra which ones were safe. They shared meals in silence, punctuated by quiet conversation. Lyra began to talk about her home, her people, and her fears. She admitted she had always felt alone, even among her court. Elias listened, never judging, never offering advice unless asked. "You know," she said one evening, "I thought losing my kingdom would destroy me. But kid, surviving with you, it feels different. I feel alive." Elias looked at her. "Survival is more than staying alive. It's learning to live even in the worst of times. That's what humans do best." Lyra smiled faintly. "Then you are truly human." He laughed softly. "Don't let anyone else hear you say that. They'll put me on a pedestal, and I hate heights." The sound made her laugh too, a light musical sound that surprised her. In the silence that followed, they simply watched the stars, the tiny points of light over a cold, gray world. But danger was never far away. One morning, the scanner picked up movement. Ships, but not like before. These were faster, more precise, and silent. Elias frowned. "Virilan fleet," he said. "They've come for us." "Not to save us." Lyra's heart sank. She had hoped her people might still care. But now she realized the truth. Her empire was gone, and the remnants of its pride would destroy anything that defied it. "We cannot fight them head on," Elias said. "But we can escape. We'll take the shuttle, fly low, and use the terrain to hide. Maybe we can find help in the outer colonies." Lyra nodded, determination in her eyes. "Then we fight differently. Not with weapons, but with our minds. Lead the way, Elias." For the first time, she spoke to him not as a princess, but as a partner. Elias felt a surge of respect. She had changed. She had learned to survive, to trust, and to act. Together, they prepared. Traps were set, diversions laid. The shuttle was repaired for one last desperate flight. And when the Virilan ships appeared over the horizon, the two humans were ready. They would not win the war. But they could survive. And in survival, they could find something greater. A bond forged in fire, trust, and human ingenuity. As the first ships came into view, Elias glanced at Lyra. "Ready?" She nodded. "For life. For each other. For whatever comes next." And with that, they launched into the skies, leaving the dead moon behind, the echoes of a broken empire beneath them.